So the main game I've been playing this month, as promised in last month's episode, is Monster Hunter Wilds.
Oh, it's a big boy.
It's not as big as you'd think.
Is it not?
No. So, I mean, this is the first new game in the series for me since getting into the franchise with Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. And between Rise and its massive Sunbreak expansion, I'm hundreds of hours. I put hundreds of hours into it.
Yeah.
It is brilliantly addictive gameplay loop of hunting, crafting, repeating. I also put about 30 or so hours into Monster Hunter World on Steam Deck, which I'd initially bounced off when I tried to get into the series with that game when that came out on PS4, but I couldn't get my head around it. But then, having found my feet in Monster Hunter Rise, I was able to transfer some of that familiarity over to World and had a good time. And I'd always been sort of under the impression that the Monster Hunter World was sort of like the big main Monster Hunter game, and Rise was then like more of a streamlined arcadey version of the formula, which I don't think is the case actually. And I had the sort of expectation that Monster Hunter Wilds would basically be Monster Hunter World 2, like, maybe a slower pace than Monster Hunter Rise, lots more sort of dense systems and just lovely stuff to get lost in. I mean, I've been so excited for Monster Hunter Wilds. My initial impression is a little bit mixed. I'll start by saying that the core of the game is still great. The combat feels brilliant. The monster designs are wonderful. The new monsters are excellent. The online play is absolutely frictionless. Happy days. However, in order to get to experience the game, you have to trudge through some of the worst story that I've ever had forced upon me, and it is forced upon you.
Oh, man.
The writing is crap. The characters are insipid, and the acting and performances are so bland. I wouldn't be surprised if it was all just done by AI. There are so many sections in the early game where you're being incredibly restricted in what you can do and where you can go, because it's pacing you against some like on rails dialogue. It's just so shit, and it's so frustrating because you just want to go and explore, and you can't for at least a dozen hours.
Oh.
And that's probably more if you don't skip through all of the skippable scenes, which I did because I just couldn't stand them anymore. Fortunately, when the game does let you play, it's pretty great. However, I've also found a lot of the new environments in Monster Hunter Wilds to be pretty... I don't really know what the word is. It's not really annoying or frustrating. I think, I don't know, they feel uncomfortable to be in. Like, they've clearly put a lot of development time and effort into making just these dense environments, but they just feel labyrinthine, but not in a good way. Like you have like a ride-on animal in this game, and that's got a auto-ride feature, and it will just automatically run towards your target, and that solves the problem of not really knowing how to get from A to B. But it's nowhere near as fun as learning the environments and knowing the quickest way to get from the top to the bottom, or like knowing a little secret like side route or a little detour you could take that allows you like to mine some ore on the way, or pick up some like dragon bones or something. And then like a lot of the sections in the environment are linked with basically what feels like QuickTime cinematic transactions, where like you're on your mount and it automatically jumps across like a bunch of floating rocks, or like a winding trail of vines, or like up the side of a waterfall. And obviously it looks really cool, but it's essentially hands off, which just feels stilted rather than fluid, which I imagine is what it's trying to do. And because of this, I don't want to explore the environments in Monster Hunter Wild anywhere near as much as I did in Rise. And perhaps it's because of the constraints of the Switch that like the environments in Rise had to be flatter, less tangled, but it made for a much better sense of perspective. It made me feel more in tune with the environment than just being bombarded with stuff. And they've also, it's a weird thing. I mean, it sort of makes sense, but it's also entirely unnecessary. They basically link all of the different environments together into like one tangible overworld, except not really, because there's basically like one road in and one road out. It's not like it's not like counties bordering each other.
Yeah.
It's like if there's a revolving door between Wales and England, and then between Scotland and England. It's like that. So it's like you can ride across all of them, but you're never going to need to do that or really want to do that. Like I mean, maybe there's some monsters that cross. No, there's no reason.
Just talk yourself out of it.
Yeah,
Mid-line there.
other than I mean, I think it is probably a tech thing to show off the fact that of the quick loading times and all of that, and that's all well and good. But it's much more fun to be able to quick travel to the other side of the map and be there like that than it is to know that you can run all the way across the entire world without a loading screen.
Shrugging the shoulders.
Yeah, give me a loading screen. It'll be quicker. Talking with friend of the show, Casper, he said that it feels like the devs put all of their effort into the wrong area of the game. Instead of making the environments more interesting, they just made them more. And instead of refining the core gameplay loop and adding in new and more dynamic things to that, they just sort of wasted a lot of time and budget on a story that, even if it was good, would feel like it was getting in the way of why we play these games, which is the gameplay loop. But like, to fill the first dozen hours with shit story, poorly told, poorly acted, that means you don't get to properly experience the core game until you're halfway through it. It does feel like a misplaced sense of developmental perspective, because I don't think that it's any more welcoming for newcomers. If anything, it's just sort of holding them back. It's not like it's drip feeding you information through this. I mean, it is a little bit, but I don't know. The good thing is that the core gameplay loop that is there is as great as ever. There's a bit more streamlining of some stuff in there now, which makes it, I guess, a bit easier for newcomers. Some of the mechanics are just a bit more intuitive and a bit more snappy. There are some new systems and mechanics in the game. One of the big sort of things they've added in this game is they're called Artian weapons, and they're essentially craftable, specified, but like randomly generated weapons that you can forge out of specific parts, which means your curation of a full weapon set forged from the pieces of, say, all the different monsters in the game. That's not then the end of your collection. You can then, craft hyper specific things, or at least, roll a chance to forge one. My hope is that when the game starts adding in some harder challenges and more aggressive monsters, I'll need to get in the weeds with like forging the best Artian weapon I can to handle specific fights. As it is, like, I'm not. I mean, I don't profess to be that. I mean, I'm not an experienced Monster Hunter player, even though I know I've put hundreds of hours into Monster Hunter Rise, and the game is not challenging. It's fun, it's great, you feel amazing and powerful, but it's not hard. It's not, and I haven't had a need to even like really kind of like spec my armor to be like, oh, I need to have this resistance to do this fight, otherwise I'll die. It's like, it's probably all right with just a generic thing. So, but I'm sure like in time with harder missions coming in and stuff that, there will be that. There's a new combat mechanic as well, which I really, really love. And it allows you to wound monsters. And then the wounds can be targeted and you can destroy them. And then it basically it's like just shoving a grenade into like a fucking axe wound or something.
Lovely.
And it's so satisfying, especially because I use the longsword weapon, and which apparently is the most popular one. It's don't know what that says about me.
Mr. Mainstream over here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you destroy a wound, it also then fills up your special gauge on your longsword by like one charge, and then you can unleash your big attack. And then like once you get your head around like the timings of like your own combat and the rhythm of like your combos, and then when you know where in like a monster's attack pattern to time these things, you can just get into a great loop of like filling your special gauge, unleash the big attack, target the wounds, destroy the wounds to fill up your gauge, big attack, rinse, repeat. It feels wonderful. And it's proper like power fantasy. It's just brilliant. I'm almost done with all of the quests and the side quests that are in the game. I'm about 34 hours in. I don't know how much content was in Monster Hunter Rise at launch, but there was so much to do in the game when I came to Rise, which was about probably at least a year after it was released, because
Yeah.
Capcom continue to like drop new quests and events all the time, and they've teased the first of what I'm sure will be many big updates for Monster Hunter Wilds, with new monsters arriving, old monsters returning, and I'm sure like a whole bunch of other cool stuff. And this is all free content as well, just to keep people playing. Like, I've been playing it for like a week, and it's had like 10 new things added, so it's gonna keep coming in, and I'm not sure how much I'll keep up with like dipping in to play new quests, but we'll see. But yeah, I think for now, my final word, my temporary final word on Monster Hunter Wilds, though, is it's good, but I think I'd rather have had Monster Hunter Rise 2 than Monster Hunter World 2. Having now played a lot of the most recent 3 Monster Hunter games, I can say from my perspective that the approach of Monster Hunter Rise, for me, is much more fun. Like, I don't know how Monster Hunter purists and more long-time series fans feel. Let me know. But I hope that the future of Wilds takes it, closer to the rampant fun of Monster Hunter Rise, that just prioritizes, big cool monsters and really big cool ways to hunt them. But whatever bunk story you're trying to have, just get it in the bin. Get it in the bin there.
Bin that story.
Get it in the bin. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having a great time.
So solid 7 out of 10.
8 out of 10 at the moment. Maybe, but then
7.5.
7.5.
Split the difference.